So we are starting the first part of this afternoon session, and the first speaker is Christian Quest from OpenStreetMap France, and he will talk about OpenEventDatabase, what, where, and when.
Okay, yeah, it works. Thank you. Direct and okay, where the idea came from starting a new project, because I'm going to talk about a new project I'm trying to start. There are several applications that provide car navigation based on OpenStreetMap data, but as far as I know, there's almost nothing about traffic condition, and sometimes I'm using Waze because of that, and I would like to have an open version of the Waze application that now is owned by Google. So I've been looking at, is there an open project addressing sharing of traffic condition? I found something, but nothing really exists. So why not start something? Because I'm sure I'm not the only one who think that it may be useful. So I want to make clear the two different kinds of data we're dealing with here. We have the cold data. OpenStreetMap is what I call cold data. It's not pejorative. It's data that describe static things. It's not designed to handle temporary information or historical information. We have a lot of debates about that, but it's really not designed for that. And there's limited support in OpenStreetMap tags about the time. You have start date, end date, but it's not fitting very well about having more real-time information. So the idea of OpenEventDatabase is to deal with hot data, the data that change very frequently or is valid for a short period of time. And that what I call events are things with what, describe what, where, and when, where OpenStreetMap is more focused on what, where, but usually you don't have when in OpenStreetMap data. So it adds one new dimension to OSM data, but it may not have to be dependent on OSM. So mixing both kinds of data, I'm sure we can build new kind of service or application or reuse that would really make OpenStreetMap data even more interesting. So for me, an event is what, where, and when. I focused on the GeoJSON format to use the geometry part to store the where and to use the properties to describe what and when. So forget about XML. So what is what? It's a property. For the moment, it's hierarchical. So I gave a few examples, like public transport, incident, smoke, or weather warning, thunderstorm. It's okay, it makes things a bit hierarchical. These could evolve based on experiments that we can do. On the coder, it's a few of the events that I've already put in the database, so you can see what they look like. There's also a property, because I think there's big classes of events. There's scheduled events. Here it's a scheduled event. We planned the date, the time, the place, and what it was. It's a scheduled event. You have unscheduled events like accidents, traffic jams, and things like that. You have forecast events. It's, for example, weather forecast, but it can be also a traffic jam forecast or things in that area. And observed events, it's like a weather measurement or something like that. It's something that has been observed. It's the difference with the forecast. It's not something that is scheduled. It's not unscheduled. It's you observe it. The where part, it's the in the JSON, it's the geometry. So events can have geometries, and they can be points, line string, polygons, or even more complex shapes if we need. Using GeoJSON makes things very easy to integrate with tools that we already use. It takes a few minutes just to show live events on UMAP. If you know UMAP, you can query data from outside and display them, and you make a live map in a couple of minutes. For the when part, the time-related part, you can define events that are at one moment or that are time range. The conference is a time range. So there's a start, there's a stop. I focused on ISO format for the dates, so it simplifies things. And all dates and timestamps in the database are GMT, UTC. Here is an example of an event. So you have the where part at the beginning, the geometry. Then you have some metadata about the event that comes from the API and the database. You have some other information, and you have the when and the what part describing what is happening when, and the where is in the geometry. So this is an example for a traffic jam. So it's a point. It could be a line string describing a portion of road that is in traffic jam conditions. So this is one example. Another example, a real one. This is state of the map. So the what is a convention. The type it's scheduled. We have the time. When it starts, when it stops. We have the website. We can have more information, more or less like OSM tags. We can have properties with values. It's really a work in progress. I got the idea more than 2 years ago, but it took time to decide to start something. The first line of code are not very old. I started in April and opened the first API backend, so we can query the database. For the moment, the database is mainly populated with data coming from sources that are freely available, or that, there's websites showing traffic jam and things like that. I'm crawling them and storing that in the database. I focused mainly on Paris area to have enough data density in one area to be able to show the possibilities of such a tool. So there's traffic conditions around Paris, also traffic condition in some French motorways, public transport incidents in Paris. We have. It allows me to make statistics. Air quality, water levels, flood alerts. We had floods around Paris recently, and so this is interesting data to publish through the API. Airport weather condition, but also earthquakes or things like that. There's very few events coming from people, from crowdsourcing, of course. It's a very new project, but I wanted to have enough data so that it's interesting to interact with the API. So now we have more than 16 million events in the database. It's also a way to test the code that I wrote when there is enough data. I've set up a REST API to share events. So we can create events, read, access existing events, update them, delete them. The payload is GeoJSON. And the backend, the current backend, is written with PostgreSQL, PostGIS, and Python. What is also interesting is the event search API. You can search for events in the database. You can search any combination of what, where, and when. The where part can be a bounding box, a distance from a latitude, longitude point. It can also be a distance around a polyline. That's interesting because if you compute a route with a routing engine, you can then query the API to know if there are events around the route that has been computed. Of course, it would be more interesting to have the routing engine directly taking into account events. But OK, that's next steps. The when part can be relative, so it's easier to query the API. You want to know traffic events in the last 15 minutes around that location. OK, you get them. Here are a few examples of reuse. This is a map that shows, I made it this morning, so there were live events this morning. It's traffic conditions around Paris with accidents, with road work, with things like that. It's simple query to the API, returning a GeoJSON collection, and it's displayed directly on UMap, 0 line of code. Another example, this is a 2016 Tour de France stages. So you can see where the Tour de France went this year. Okay, other example. There's many kind of events like that I tried to put in the database. You see, it's not only road events. It's more than that. It can be cultural event. It can be sport event too. Another example, it's the last earthquake. Today we had an earthquake of magnitude 6.5 in the Philippines. Okay. So the project is an open project. The code is on GitHub. The API is running. It has been running since April. It's a small server, so it will not scale if we put billions of events. But it's good to do experiments with that. The API is documented on the wiki, and your feedback is welcome, and your questions now are welcome.
Thank you, Christian, for this nice talk. Are there any questions?
Hi, is there any history feature for events planned so I can look up who modified the data and when?
There's not the same, in the current implementation, there's not the same historization of data that what we have in OpenStreetMap. It's something that we could implement. The thing is, it's not only a real-time event. So when you create an event in the database, the event stays in the database. So you can query for traffic jam last month, for example.
Hi. Why not using Caldas and instead creating a new API?
It's possible to interact in another way using Caldas. It's just, OK, I started something with based on GeoJSON. Maybe it's not a good idea, I don't know, but at least I wanted to start something. And it makes things very easy to use, and Caldas may be more focused on, I don't know if Caldas could be used to describe traffic jam. I don't know. I'm not sure about that.
Thank you. I can certainly see the value of this. Maintaining opening times and opening dates and stuff in OSM is always a pain. I forgot my question now. No, I've forgotten the question.
Where?
Thank you. Is the structure of the events, is it open? Can I have tags? And can I say I have a new type of event that you've never thought of?
Yeah, it's absolutely open. There's no checking in the kind of events for the moment. The only thing that the API checks is that you must have a type, what, when, start or stop, and a geometry. If all this is there, it's fine.
And can I then interrogate the database by these tags?
Yes.
There's an overpass API?
There's no?
An overpass API?
More or less, it's the idea is this. At least, if you don't have a search function right now, it doesn't make the project very interesting, and that's why I also worked on the search part and not only on the create, read thing.
First of all, I really like the idea of the project, and also you were saying about versioning. I would think of versioning possible use case would be when like I'm adding an event and then I have to change the hour or something like this, and then I would like to edit that event on the database so I could add some modification, like maybe the venue will change because of, I know, internet is down and I will change it in other places. So this is why it would be useful to be able to modify it. But having a global database that I could use, I found it really useful in a lot of different stuff also, because it would allow me to standardize different stuff. Like, let's say I do a hackathon in Romania and stuff like that, and then I will go to San Francisco and I want to search for hackathon. Kind of events that would be, and also for posterity, because I will have them all there to check, to do statistics, to... So
yeah, but it's like OpenStreetMap. You can create any tag, but we agree to use the same tags so that it makes the data useful. So I think we can have the same approach, but okay, it doesn't close the system to limit to some kind of events. That's the interesting part, and I really like that in OpenStreetMap, and I wanted to keep the same.
And also, I would see this in humanitarian uses, like, I know, the spread of malaria or different cases of Ebola or stuff like that, that could be mapped on the same tagging schema, and then if I want to query this, or, I don't know, events in the parks where I can go and have a picnic, I only have to change the tags schema, so that, in a way, it would be really, really useful.
Yeah, you can search on the what part, so you can limit on only public transport events and not weather or traffic events. And yeah, it's completely possible, but it's really an open tagging system like OpenStreetMap. The only limit I did not say, it's public events, not private events. We are not going to put our own calendar or rendezvous, barbecue. If it's a public barbecue, yes.
So my question before I had my mental block was, is it linked to OSM IDs? And also, in terms of a feed, is it possible to essentially get a sort of time paginated change feed, so that, for example, an importing process could essentially get what's there, but with the knowledge that anything that's previously retrieved wasn't in the same data, it isn't in data.
About OSM IDs, I think it could run more or less like what we do with Wikipedia or Wikidata IDs, that by adding a tag providing the ID of the object in OpenStreetMap or the Wikidata ID. On some events that I created, I added Wikidata ID, for example, or OpenStreetMap ID. It's really experimental for the moment, but it's something to test and see what the use case we can have with that. About updating events, each event has a unique ID, and when you create an event, it returns you the ID. So if you want to keep track of that and update it later, you can do it. You can also lock an event. When you create an event, you can give a secret, and nobody can change the event without providing the secret again. And of course, the secret is never returned when you access the event. I did that for the police, because the police in Paris, they are doing an experiment to send alerts in case of emergency. And of course, they want that if they create an alert, they don't want somebody to delete it. So that's why I created that secret system. It's not a login, you don't need account, there's no token, and the API is completely open, but at least you have control on the event that you created. Yeah, you can create fake events like you can create fake data in OpenStreetMap.
Scheduled events are often recurring events. Did you think about extending the when description or leaving it to just a description?
For the moment, I don't know how to handle them in my database, so I have no real answer for that, but I would be very happy to have other people try to find a solution with me. Because, for example, for public transport, bus timetable or things like that, it's always the same hour every day, and we are not going to create an event for each time the bus stops at one place. So, yeah, it's a thing to add, yes.
Hi. If I understand, you do web crawling to get additional data and bind them in your and store them in your database. And after you call them where there is a query and you display them. I don't know, did you manage to think about the problem that web crawling can do to other servers? Because if you do bad web crawling, you can increase the load of other servers and false their traffic statistics. Did you manage to think about that problem and the way you can crawl over that servers to not false their statistics?
For the crawling I'm doing, for example, the public transport in Paris, I'm querying a JSON file once per every minute. Once per minute, so it's not real time, but they do not publish data in real time anyway. So yeah, it depends on the kind of crawling you're doing, of course, but I don't think it's big loads on this kind of servers.
Last question.
Yeah, Simon isn't here, so I'm going to ask, what's the license of the data itself?
Okay, we see that
because it's difficult because you have different sources and so on, so I guess it's...
Yeah, clearly it's, okay, I've put that problem on the side for the moment.
Yeah, that's also on the side, that's okay.
But that's also why, it depends how you see the system. If you see it as a search engine, you don't care that much about the data license. Okay, what's the license of the search results from Google?
Their terms of service.
Okay, so I can define my term of services, but they have nothing to do with the term of services that the sites they are crawling. Yeah. So, okay, it's one way to deal with that. But the other thing is the contributor's term, what happens to the data that you put in the database. And I think this is more important, in fact. But this is something to talk, because I have no clear answer about that. Thank you.
Okay.